Grab a couple plastic bowls from Dollar Tree. I'm using some really strong glue to attach two large bowls together and then two small bowls together. And then I'm going to place the small ones on top of the large ones, and we're going to start to get the shape of a rabbit. I picked up this foam kneeler from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to trace the shape of a bunny ear on this, and then I'm going to cut it out with a craft knife. To finish it off, I am going to glue the foam ears to the very top. Before moving on to the next step, I'm going to let all of this glue dry really well. Now to add some moss. I tried gluing this to these bowls a couple different ways, and the best way that I found is actually just using basic white glue. I'm painting it on with a paintbrush and then just adding the moss one section at a time. You can also use spray glue, which is kind of messy. You can also use hot glue, but it kind of hurts your fingers. This is going to hold up really well. Once I've got everything covered, I want to let this dry completely. Now, to give this kind of an even coloring, I'm going to take this outside and add a coat of green spray paint. This is just going to cover any of the gaps where you can still see the bowl, and it's going to give all the kind of moss the same color. Once all that spray paint is dry, I can give my Easter bunny a little bit of a haircut and trim off some of that extra moss. Now to finish this off, I'm going to wrap it with fairy lights. I'm going to take my whole Easter topiary and place it in a really heavy flower pot, tuck the fairy lights in the back, and I can put this on my front porch for Easter. Head to Dollar Tree and grab a couple foam kneelers and some spring floral items. I started by drawing a bunny onto a piece of cardstock, then I cut it out, and I'm going to just trace it onto this foam kneeler. I grabbed a craft knife. I want one with a little bit longer blade. You could also use a box cutter here. Once it's completely cut out, I can use the scissors to take off any of the extra rough edges around the sides. Now I'm going to stick a skewer into the bottom of the foam bunny, and I'm going to paint it. I chose a mixture of white and blue to get this really pastel spring color. I'm going to paint the front and the sides. Once it's dry, I'm going to add a little face using a Sharpie, and I just tied a cute bow and added a button to add to the front of the bunny. With the bunny done, I can assemble the planter. I'm filling the bottom with some rocks and some floral foam. This is going to be on my front porch and I don't want it to blow away, so I want the base to be really sturdy. Then I'm going to start with the bunny. It's on a skewer because I can stick it right into the floral foam and it's going to stay put. Then I'm going to add a variety of floral sprigs all around it. I'm choosing to put some grasses in the back and some blue and white flowers in the front. I really like these little Easter eggs on sticks. I can plop those in around, and this is perfect for spring and Easter. I made two in slightly different color schemes, and I can use them inside to decorate, or I can put them out on my front porch as an early sign of spring.
I hit the dollar store in order to get started with my Easter decorations. I had some pool noodles at home and I had an idea. I laid out my pool noodle and brought out some garland that I had purchased online. This garland served as the base, wrapping around the pool noodle several times. I then filled it in a bit more using the dollar store garland. My next step was to use the string of eggs and wrap those around as well. Following that, I ended up moving forward with the carrots, and then I used the ribbon in order to cover up any spots where I felt like there was just a little too much pool noodle showing through. And then I took it outside to set it in place. I set up the top garland by just using the hook that I have above my door and making sure that that was in place. For the side pieces though, I used a pretty cool little trick. I placed some Velcro command strips right along the side of my door frame, and then I placed a zip tie and then placed the other side of the Velcro right on top of that. So I had a holder. I found these Easter eggs. I grabbed several of them and decided that I would stack them together vertically. I needed to set about making holes in the eggs themselves. I tried using my drill, but every time I tried, I cracked through the egg. Then I had the idea to try to pinpoint some heat right onto the plastic surface. I grabbed my glue gun, turned it to high, and plugged it in. Once it was warm enough, I pressed the tip of the glue gun, not using any glue. Once I was able to get a hole started, then I was able to use my drill just to make it larger so that it would fit the size of my stand. As with most things, once I figured it out, the whole process got a lot quicker. I made the holes in the eggs so that they would all be sitting at slightly different angles. I wanted it to look kind of haphazard and fun, as opposed to straight up and down or all the eggs laying on their side. The great thing about using a stand like this is that the height is adjustable. So once I had 3 eggs in place, I just lowered the height of the stand, and that was all I really needed. I only wanted this stand to go to the end of the garland that I had made in a previous tutorial. Once my stand was ready, the next part was to just give it a little bit of flair. I did this just by adding a little bit of ribbon and something on the top to camouflage the top of the stand itself. At the bottom part of the stand, I cut a little piece of this astroturf, and that was all it took.
To start this project, you're going to need 2 garden kneeling pads from Dollar Tree. Next, I've got a brown paper bag that I had saved, and I'm going to flip it to the back side, and I'm going to build a template. So what I'm going to start doing is, obviously there is a line right down the center here, and you could use something different if you want, like a piece of paper, scrap paper, butcher paper, whatever you want. So next what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this rectangle out of the bag. Now I want to take and fold this in half. This way I can make sure that my template will be even on both sides. And now I'm just going to go ahead and kind of cut out the shape. And now I'm going to open it up, and you can see that I've made my template. So now I'm going to take my template and put it onto my garden mat. And then I'm going to go ahead and trace this onto the mat. Now that I've got the template traced, I can remove my template, and my shape is ready to go. Now it's time to cut our shape out. And you can use a scissors or maybe a big cooking scissors, a utility scissors. You can use a serrated knife. You can use a razor blade. I'm going to try using this serrated knife first. I've protected my surface, and this is not a knife that I cook with. This knife is actually from the dollar store as well, and I just use it for crafting. Now my shape is made, and if there's any pointy areas or areas you don't like, you can just take your scissors and just trim up those little edges to get them to smooth out, and just shape them that way. Or again, you could use a razor blade or something else of your choice. Now it's time to create the face. So I like using buttons, but you could also use markers or anything like that. So I'm just going to add my little bunny face in here and put it where I want it to, and then we'll be gluing it on. Now I'm going to hot glue them into place, and then I'll let them cool. Now, depending upon where you're placing your little bunnies will depend upon what kind of glue you'll want to use. So for example, sometimes hot glue doesn't work as well if you have major hot and cold temperature fluctuations. So you could use things like silicone, or you could use epoxy. But now I'm going to wait for this face to cool, and then we're going to talk about what's next. Now there's lots of ways you can use these. You could put magnets on the back of them and put them on your refrigerator. You can take a skewer and stick it into the foam and push it up and make it a stake for your yard. So I'm going to take some twine or jute, whatever you want to call it, and I'm going to cut the end here. Next, I'm going to make a loop at the bottom. Now you can adjust this to as big or as little as you want. I'm gonna go ahead and flip the bunny over. I'm gonna be placing it right here. I'm gonna add a little hot glue here, and then I'm gonna place the twine in the hot glue, waiting for that to cool because I'm gonna be hanging mine. So I'm hanging the bunnies on my garland hooks that I use in the winter. And this is where they'll hang. I hope this inspires you to make some bunnies of your own. Thanks for watching Home Tech, and I'll see you next time.